Hi everybody, welcome to Leaning Left. I'm David Rodriguez. I'm here with another installment of What Have Conservatives Co-opted? As I mentioned in the first video of this, they're really good at taking a word or an idea or a symbol and just sort of claiming it as their own so that if anyone else tries to use it, they still automatically think of conservatives. It's amazing. Credit where it's due. I mean, they're brilliant at this. But, I like to highlight those things because I would like to change that. I would love for us to take these things back. So today I'm talking about another word, and the word that they have co-opted is freedom. Freedom. That is core to being an American, right? That is the whole idea of why America was created. For our freedoms. Like, that's what has always made us stand out. But conservatives have sort of a weird view of it. And despite that, they've managed to get it to the point where if anybody says freedom-loving Americans, like, you automatically think conservative, don't you? Because that's how they've somehow turned things. But for a long time, the only thing they really were excited about as far as freedom goes was the Second Amendment. It's the part of the Constitution they care about. The rest of it, take it or leave it. But that Second Amendment, despite reading it wrong, they're really, really into that. And that was the freedom that they're so excited about. There's even gun magazines called like America's First Freedom and whatnot. All about guns. So there was that, but since then it has expanded out. They're actually kind of using that word in more nonsensical ways. Like, I can at least understand when they're using it for the Second Amendment. They want to have the freedom to carry whatever arsenal they want to have. It's kind of ridiculous. It's worth pointing out that no freedom that we have is absolute, right? It's not. So anyway, so let's talk about how they're using it now, other than just guns. And a lot of this is coming out of Florida with Governor Ron DeSantis, who's creating a template for what conservatives seem to want America to be. Their definition of freedom. So I'm going to talk about a few things, and you can just think about it and tell me if you think this means freedom. So they're banning books. They're banning books from schools. And I've talked about this before on Twitter, and I got people coming back, they banned pornography from schools. And at first I thought they were just crazy. But it turns out there was one book in one school that had drawn images that are still not appropriate for a kid. I think it was in elementary school, might have been in junior high, I'm not certain, but regardless, probably shouldn't have been in a school or a school library. But those aren't the only books that are getting banned. In fact, that's really only one case of a book like that. What you do see a lot of are books that are like autobiographies of people of color, or telling the history of slavery. Things that happen. These are things that, for people who aren't white, are really important. And honestly, they should be important to white people as well, because all of these things are not just part of one group's history. This is all American history. These are all people that have impacted a lot of people in one way or the other. But those are getting banned. Don't let anyone tell you it's just that one book, because there's quite a lot. So that's terrible. Throughout history, the people who ban books, they're never the good guys. But they still call this freedom. That's how would they put it? It's freedom to send your kid to a school in which their minds won't be corrupted by woke books, I guess. Also, you could just choose not to read them. Or the parents could say, hey, my child, please don't read those books. Problem solved. But the other people who want to still could. That sounds more like freedom, I think. So what else do we have? We have history. I mean, this kind of ties into books a little bit, but entire classes are getting banned because they teach things about race in our country that might make some people uncomfortable. In fact, in Florida, the teachers aren't supposed to do any lesson that might make people feel uncomfortable about their race. Now that sounds very broad, but it's not really. It's not like they're worried about all the students feeling uncomfortable. They're just worried about the white students feeling uncomfortable. So they can't talk about slavery. There was one example I heard about, Rosa Parks, about how a book described what she did. And the book has been watered down to the point where it just says she had to change seats and wouldn't want to. Which kind of leaves out the whole reason. Doesn't really explain anything. What are we supposed to learn from that? What are kids supposed to learn from that? But I guess that's the freedom to not feel bad about something that happened in our history. Granted, there's also the freedom to know those things, and so you can make other choices, freedoms, accordingly, but I guess that's not really important to conservatives right now. So let's talk about another freedom. It's religion. Now, we do have in this country freedom of religion, but you kind of wouldn't know it if you just listened to conservatives, right? Like Donald Trump famously had a Muslim ban where he didn't want Muslims coming into the country. That's not freedom. It's not. And before anyone comes at me and dares say like these people are terrorists, like that's just bigotry. It is. Are there some extremist Muslims? Of course. Yeah, there's extremists everything. Any belief system, there's extremists. There's a lot of extremist Christians in the US right now. And frankly, they scare me a lot more than the extremist Muslims do. But nonetheless, that was there. Anytime you hear a politician talking about, or a pundit talk about how, oh, this person is George Soros funded, or this is globalization, all these things are founded in anti-Semitism. They are. Sorry if you don't like that, but it's true. It's all coded language to tell people that they can't really have freedom of religion. They have to be Christian. They need to be Christian. That's not freedom. That's, in fact, getting dictated to you what you have to believe. So, nonetheless, they call that a freedom. They want the freedom to be bigoted and treat others differently, which might be freedom for them, but not freedom for everyone else. So, finally, and I know there's probably a lot of topics here that I've missed, and hopefully I'll get to them all in a future video, but finally, and a very recent development, they talk about freedom, but they're not letting women have freedom over their own bodies, are they, right? Because they've basically made abortion able to be made illegal in a lot of states, and that's what's happening. The Supreme Court went back on a previous Supreme Court decision in Roe versus Wade to allow abortion to be outlawed. Now, whatever you think of abortion, that really does hurt the credibility of the Supreme Court. They basically went against themselves, which tells us that anything can be reversed at any time. Literally anything. Their judgments mean almost nothing now. Because as soon as a different judge gets in there, everything could change. That's not really how it's supposed to be. They're there to interpret the law using the previous cases to help them make their decisions, but that's not what they did. They had their agenda, and so now here we are. Now we have states making abortions illegal under any circumstances, even if not having one threatens the life of the mother. There have been cases where they've had to airlift women to other states so they could save their own lives. I'm gonna have to do an entire video on abortion at some point, but right now they're saying they have the freedom to choose whether or not that should be illegal, but it's not freedom over anyone's individual bodies. And I know some people say, well, that's a life. What about the freedoms of the fetus? Well, here's the thing. Neither science nor the Bible backs that up, because I know a lot of this is found in religion. The Bible doesn't really talk about abortion anywhere, and in the few places it talks about the beginning of life, it talks about it being at first breath, not at first, well, they say first heartbeat, really, it's just electrical pulses, but, whatever gets their ideas across. So, I'd also like to point out that ban is wildly unpopular. Like, the vast majority of Americans are against it, but they're doing it anyway, which is not what the representatives of the people of America are supposed to do, but I guess that's their freedom, even if it stomps all over ours. So that's what they've taken. They've taken the word freedom, they've made it their own, they've twisted it and corrupted it. So it's really only freedom for very certain people, and they have the freedom to oppress others. That's the freedom that they're talking about when they say it. And that is not the definition of freedom. As liberals or progressives or Democrats, whatever you want to call yourself, we need to start taking that back. I'm not in control of any ad campaigns, or, I don't have any big speeches on the floor of Congress, obviously, but let's start doing it. Let's start talking about freedom now. Let's make this a Democratic word as opposed to a Republican one. Let's change things, because if they ever had a right to that word being theirs before, they've surely squandered that away now. So if you agree with me, please hit like and subscribe and click the little bell icon so you can know about the next time I put out a video. And always remember, if you keep leaning left, you'll always be right.